We can probably get started here, guys. It's easily 5 after, and we're all here. I'd like to introduce Glenn Gary. What are you now? What's your status? Research head.
Head of research, government, and non-government engagement.
Right on. There you go. We have Heather Kellington on board with us today, our treasurer, and acting general help all over the place. Heather fills in many spots. She's also involved in helping me a lot with the Tesla Owners Club Vancouver Island thing, which is great. Thanks for that,
And
Heather.
she's head of Vice.
Oh yeah, that's right. She's vice president now too.
Vice squad.
Actually, you're vice president. And Dave Kenway's the new secretary. He's unable to make it most of the time. We got Fred Wiesen in there. He's our past president, the man with the black hat. Few people wear hats, and even fewer wear a black one. Oh, it's not dark, it's dark green. Very nice. And of course, our puppeteer pushing the buttons behind the scenes is Jim Henshaw. And when you go to the website and you make a contact to the site, Jim's the one who usually sees it first and sprays it out for everybody else to find someone to pick it up, and is usually responsible for virtually every contact we make at some point. So thanks, Jim, very much.
Pay no attention to the little man behind the curtain.
Right. I was going to mention Eric Jenkins is here, and he's the little man in front of the red sports car there. Because Eric is, he's a regular, and he just so happens to be right dead center on my screen. So today we have a guest, and I'd like to introduce him by saying quickly, you know, behind all of this is energy, and I think it's going to be increasingly important, the generation and the storage, as well as our usage. And of course, we like alternate energy on this club. And one of those things is solar. We have today with us to talk about that and discuss it in many ways, Tim Grangen from Shift Energy, who I met when I first pursued our own little utility setup in our backyard. Tim was our contact point on that project. And I got to know him a little bit over the last, I guess it's been a good year and a half now. So Tim, if you'd like to just take your time, introduce as much or as little, please tell us a bit about yourself and your plans maybe coming up and how things are going. And we can follow up that, folks, with a really good Q&A. Tim.
Yeah, so my name is Tim Grangen, like David mentioned. There's a couple of familiar faces in the room, one being David, Glenn, Lee. So thanks for you guys tuning in and everybody else. I guess if I went all the way back to 6 years ago or 7 years ago, I'm pretty young, as you can see. I'm 24, graduated high school and had really no idea what I wanted to do. Was signed up for like 4 or 5 various post-secondary kind of routes and decided to jump on the bandwagon of energy. So I took energy systems engineering technology. And as part of that, we were exposed to various things. I guess if you split it off half and half, one half was renewable energy generation, the other half being energy conservation and energy management. And as part of the tail end of that program, we had an internship opportunity, and this was actually, I grew up in PEI, so I was doing this in Charlottetown at Holland College, and I found Shift on the internet, and they didn't have a solar division at the time. I called them up and had a really good chat with the owner, Colin, and sooner than later flew out, did a 4-week internship with him, where I learned a lot. And after 4 weeks, I was offered a full-time position, so then I moved out here. And since then, lots has happened. It's been about 4 years now. We have completed, I think, well over 200 solar projects on Vancouver Island, all the way up to Haida Gwaii, spanning over into the Lower Mainland. And overall, I guess the amount of uptake has been, really encouraging, and we're now the highest rated on Google for solar in the province. So we pride ourselves on customer service first and foremost, and operate somewhat as like a professional services company where we've got a diversified team that we've got people with backgrounds in the trade side, engineering side, finance side, where we can tackle any aspect of a solar renewable energy project, with battery storage, from site evaluation, feasibility studies, system design, permitting, utility interconnection approvals, and procurement of materials and equipment, and installation and commissioning and monitoring. So we've grown. It was Colin and myself 4 years ago. Last year we had about, well, I guess last year we had about six to eight staff, and then this past year in 2020 we grew to about 15 or 16 staff. So we're now operating with a Mid-Island crew and a South Island crew, and we've got our office and warehouse space here where I am in Langford, just on the road next to the ambulance shelter. And yeah, overall, like, it's been a very exciting industry to be a part of. There's lots of new technology to stay on top of and research, and one thing that I think is very important in this industry is to always keep an open mind and stay unbiased and look at every brand, every manufacturer, every product that's out there, in order to look at delivering the best possible systems. So I've gotten exposed to a lot of, like, I guess, the horizontal aspects of the business, in the sense that when you start small or kind of startup mode, even though Shift's been around since 2010, you get to see a lot of the pieces of what makes the machine a machine. And so I've gone from doing installations to sales calls to project coordination and material procurement and permitting services, like I guess everything that we do I've touched on. But it's kind of been interesting to bring new people on and train them and hand off some responsibility, just so that we can scale and keep up with the demand. And as far as the next few years go, I think it's going to be some busy times. So I think I'll kind of leave the bio at that, and hopefully that kind of shares a little bit of where I came from, where I'm going, where we're going, and whatnot. But that's us, and I'm sure there might be some Q&A about the industry, and so maybe we can open up the floor to that.
Sure, that's been it's really good, Tim. You've come a long way. Wow, short time. So that's awesome. And I was just wondering if you wanted to talk some more about the systems themselves and kind of that process, or should we leave it all into Q&A? What is any suggestions from anyone how we should proceed here?
Yeah, I could talk a little bit from a holistic perspective.
Yeah,
a lot of the systems that we're doing are solar systems. Battery storage is definitely an increasing component of the business. We're actually working with Lee on a very neat project up on the Malahat, totally off grid, Powerwall, solar generator, lots of moving pieces. It's not a project that I'm directly involved in, but anyway, I'm going to, Jim, do you think, or David, if I could share my screen, I can just pull up like a little infographic.
Yeah, Jim will work on that, help you with that. And then just carry on and give, go ahead and talk about the industry a little bit and the actual projects, however you want to feel, I don't know, 5, maybe 10 minutes. Yeah. Whatever you feel comfortable with. You've got lots of time, Tim, it's all yours.
And screen shares available.
Okay. So net metering. This is kind of the basics where it starts, right? Net metering, how it works. You know, we often get asked how we're actually making solar work in a rainforest. You know, a lot of people are asking, you know, I use most of my electricity in the winter, and that's not exactly when the sun's shining or when the days are long and when there's lots of light, which is 100% true. Net metering is a program that Hydro put out there in 2004. They followed the trend of many other utilities around the globe. You know, net metering is something that a lot of utilities have been doing to kind of help promote the growth of renewables. And you know, you guys have probably heard before that the missing link in the renewable energy industry is energy storage. And so this net metering program, this stuff kind of removes that gap where you don't necessarily have to worry about the energy storage component because you don't need batteries. This is obviously only true if you're looking to, you know, offset your electricity usage and not necessarily looking to be totally grid independent. But you know, on a typical system, you've got a couple of major components, namely, you know, your solar panels, your inverters or inverter, and your racking and substructure. But anyways, the solar panels, they're, you know, they've got no moving parts to them. They're not doing a whole lot other than, you know, absorbing light and photons and converting them into DC electrons. And so the inverters are really what interact with the grid, and they convert the DC into AC, but also they're certified through, you know, UL standards like UL 1741 and CSA 22.2, so that they can actually safely put out a quality of power that is equal to or even greater than what's coming down the line from hydro. So what you end up with is the inverters are going to feed your main electrical panel whatever electricity can be harnessed from light, and that power gets distributed amongst your house if you're calling for it first. So say you're generating 3 kilowatts and your house is only consuming 2 kilowatts, then you've now met your needs with the solar system, and then the surplus goes out to the grid. And so what happens is every 2 months on your billing cycle, the amount of electricity that you have consumed, net of everything, that's what you're being charged for. So like as far as line items go, you know, right now maybe you've got you know, 2,000 kilowatt hours of inflow from the grid over a bi-monthly billing cycle. You're being billed, you know, for the first 1,350 kilowatt hours at about 10 cents a kilowatt hour, and then everything. I'm muted. Here we go.
You're back.
So I'm not sure where I was, but yeah, right now, like if hydro has a tiered rate structure, so for the most part, you're being billed, you know, 10 cents a kilowatt hour for the first 1,350, and then 14.5 for the rest, GST included. If you've got a net metered system and you generate, say, 3,000 kilowatt hours during that same 2,000 kilowatt hour billing cycle, you're going to be charged for 0 kilowatt hours. You're going to pay your 20 cents a day service charge, and then the 1,000 kilowatt hours of surplus are then put aside in what they call your customer generation account, which then when you get your next bill, you're jumping ahead with that 1,000 kilowatt hours that you've got left over. So what we end up with is, you know, the ability to, in some cases, design systems that can, you know, produce an amount of electricity over a net annual basis that's equivalent to what any given meter will consume. There are some limitations around that, like, you know, hydro only allows interconnection up to 100 kilowatts AC. and you know, they kind of disencourage generating surplus on an annual basis by only paying you now the fair market or wholesale market rate of electricity, which is, you know, expected to be around 5-6 cents a kilowatt hour. So you know, there's definitely some fine tuning there, and it can get a little bit tricky on new construction, but that is kind of changing with things like energy advisors being involved in a lot of the new builds, providing calculations on expected annual load based on building envelope assemblies and square footage and volume of conditioned space and mechanical systems and things like that. But overall, you know, it's a pretty neat program. And like I said, it's been around for about 17 years now. And just last year, they released some updates that actually are actually kind of advantageous. I was kind of surprised. In the past, the true up period for when, you know, they would look at your overall consumption and your overall production, and, you know, determine whether or not you're in a surplus state, and then, you know, pay you out for any surplus. That was always 12 months, every 12 months, but it was 12 months from when you initially got your approval to commence parallel operation. So i.e. kind of 2 weeks after your system was installed. And so what we'd end up with is, like, if you had your system connected in September, you'd probably have a surplus in September. So, you know, I would much rather carry forward my credits into the winter when I can offset tier 2, rather than, you know, get paid out at, it used to be 10 cents a kilowatt hour, now 5-6 cents. So now what they've done is it's set by default to March. And so, you know, what you end up with then is, you know, your cycles kind of start when consumption levels start to fall off as the summer rolls around and days get longer. So it's, you know, it's a pretty great way to make it so that in most cases, people won't end up with kind of getting, I mean, screwed over. So yeah, that's net metering. There's lots more I could say, but I think that covers the ground of it for the most part, unless there's any specific questions on that.
Yeah,
Hi,
that's
John Penman here. I think what really interests me, and I'm sure must interest a lot of other people who are attending your presentation here, is some idea of what it involves in terms of cost versus the return that you've been talking about. What does it involve to get to the point where you can in fact be independent of the grid, at least for maybe during a power failure or you know, some prolonged period of lack of grid power? Because these are the sort of questions which will help us, help me certainly, make decisions about whether or not to look further into maybe implementing something like this.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with costs and financials a little bit. I know David taught me a little bit about how he rationalized the investment when he moved ahead. But you know, for the most part, there are really a lot of variables at play. Every house, every roof, every property has different sun exposure. So it's definitely hard to nail it down like on a general level, because you know, it can make sense for one house and it could make sense for, or it could make less sense for the other. Generally, you know, I would say the average system we're doing right now is probably on a residential level, probably 10 kilowatts, give or take a little bit. So we're typically pricing jobs at around $1.95 to $2.40 a watt, depending on size and complexity of the installation. So, 10 kilowatt system could be anywhere from, 20 grand plus GST, right all the way through to, 22, 23. That being said, smaller systems can start at around 8 to 10 grand for like a 3-ish, maybe 4 kilowatt system. And then right the way through to, we've installed some, I guess, much larger systems. We just did like a 60 kilowatt system on a residence, well, kind of a compound. And, that's where it's all about kind of understanding the electricity needs of the property, the real estate that's available, and what makes sense kind of on an individualized level. So our process pretty much starts with like, we use design software called Aurora Solar. It might actually be interesting for me to pull up like a sample from Aurora, but essentially we, with BC Hydro usage history, which would be kind of a key data point for anyone that's looking at this to kind of collect, getting an understanding of the monthly usage over an annualized level. We can then say, okay, well, usage is X, and then with an address, we can use our design software that basically takes climatic data and GIS, like mapping data, and do an energy model on that particular house. So yeah, it's gonna vary as far as like payback metrics go. It's we're typically looking at like 10 to 15 year simple payback period. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8% annualized rate of return in year one, escalating obviously over time as rates continue to go up with hydro. I know we're slated for, well, hydro's applied for a 2.7% increase in April 2021. However, over the last 12 years, based on the BC Hydro or the British Columbia Utilities Commission, Glenn, you might have done some research on this too, actually. The average annual rate increase is just over 5% per year. So when I say 10 to 15 years, we typically include a 3% annual inflation rate on BC Hydro.
Yeah, Tim, if you wanted to use my townhouse as an example, go ahead.
Sure.
And I kind of looked at it from this point of view of, what over the life of the system, what is that going to cost me? And when I worked it out with inflation and BC Hydro rates going up with inflation, and they'll never be less than inflation. And who knows when they may have to buy out the Site C. I figured out over 25 or 30 years, I can't remember right now, my cost per kilowatt was going to be 7 cents over that period. So that is, 2/3 of what you're paying today for step one. But you have to take the long view. It's kind of like the idea I look at solar is, it's like buying your house. Okay, you can put out less money if you like, and be a renter all your life, but you never see any of that money back. And over the long term, you will pay more. I see buying my electricity is like buying my house. That's my rationalization, and plus it's the fuel for my car.
Yeah, there's so many ways to look at it. New construction or anybody looking at the long term, typically, you can use like say if you added it to your mortgage and you were building a new house, typically the monthly cash flows of your savings in the first year versus the added payment to your mortgage is like your hydro savings are typically higher. So you're able to generate net positive cash flow right away on a system that's got, a 25 plus year design life with 25-year warranty on the panels and on most of the key equipment. So the important thing though is obviously like 10, 15 years is still a long time. There's no doubt about it. And I think that's a tough pill to swallow for quite a few people, because you don't necessarily know how long you're going to stay in your house. You don't know if you're able to sell your house at a premium when it's all said and done, because maybe it's a tear down. So there's a lot of things to consider. But that's all kind of part of it, I guess. We could present the same proposal to two different people with the exact same metrics, and one person might go for it, one person might not. We're all going to spend our money the way we want. Yeah. So here on my screen is a little snapshot of Glenn's place. This is within Aurora Solar, which is our design software, like I mentioned. The kind of like, I don't know, the green stuff here is LiDAR. So LiDAR is available in most locations now. And essentially it gives us the ability to look at like everything around, anything that might be blocking the sun, and be very detailed. It's very important to consider that even though like the winter light levels are lower, you're still generating 10 to 20% of what you would in the summer when it's the winter time. We try and include every obstruction that could even impact generation, even during the winter. But John, does that kind of answer your question with like cost and payback and stuff like that?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. The other thing was the batteries and
Yeah.
making yourself independent of the grid. Kind of idea of cost on that?
Yeah, that's like independence from the grid in the sense of like backup power, or independent, like totally off the grid.
I think backup power is where I'm looking at it from, but maybe people looking at both.
Yeah. So off grid is a little bit more challenging. So I like to get into that more on an individualized level, because there's just a lot more variables there. We did just do an off grid house in Horn Lake, kind of dialed back. Heating was all wood, but it was the first off grid or second off grid Tesla Powerwall in BC. We did do the first, but it wasn't this one. I'm very proud of that. But Horn Lake was like, we did a generator, we did 2 power walls, and we did, I think, 8 or 9 kilowatts of solar. And I think that was something like 70 grand. On the backup power side, Tesla Powerwall supplied and installed is typically something that'll run like round trip 17 to 18.5 plus GST. The equipment from Tesla is about 12,500 between the gateway and the might be able to pull something up on that, but hold on, I've got a doc here. Here we go. So Powerwall, it's an interesting one. It's lithium ion, and anybody who's got a Tesla has the same battery chemistry in their car. One thing that nobody's really got Tesla beat on, I think, right now, and this might spark some debate, but just with the reason they're so competitive on battery storage is just because they're manufacturing at such a large scale, and none of the other like vehicle or EV manufacturers, I think, are up to battery storage right now, to my knowledge. I'm a little nervous to say that because I'm in front of a group of EV enthusiasts, but Tesla Powerwall, it's interesting. It's got a 10-year warranty. It's got a, I'll just go right down to here. So it's got a 10-year warranty, and in backup mode, it's actually got an unlimited cycle life. We have looked at other lithium-ion home energy storage systems. We tried to quarterly, and I looked at it end of last year for another project where we did 2 Powerwalls on a house for something like 35 grand. There was a lot of there was basically an electrical renovation there. Sorry we didn't call you, but when we looked at it, we were able to deliver a 10 kilowatt backup solution, offering 27 kilowatt hours of energy storage to the client, with the equipment, the labor, like round trip turnkey cost for about 35 grand. And when we looked at other brands like Enphase's new system, Solar Edge and LG Chem, Iguana, there's a number of them. Another one that was interesting to read about was Panasonic's Evervolt system, but they're all way more expensive for less value. Like the cost of the equipment alone to ship was, without shipping, was more on most of those systems than what we were actually providing to the client with Powerwall. So it is kind of interesting because I guess Tesla is known to be one of the more, I guess, expensive EV brands, but they're actually the most cost-effective lithium-ion energy storage systems for residential applications. And I think it all comes down to the fact that they're manufacturing these at such a large scale. A typical system, so here's a bit of like a layout. So we're able to do whole home backup and partial home backup. And so most homes opt for partial home backup. And in that case, you're designating a specified number of circuits, most often, lighting, internet and communications or media panel, say the blower for a fireplace, a few receptacles, fridge, freezer, utility pumps like sump pump and well pump and whatnot. And, putting that and isolating it all on a critical load panel. And then the other piece of equipment here that's pretty much managing everything is called the backup gateway. So the backup gateway is, going to allow current to flow from the grid into that sub panel in normal conditions. But within milliseconds of a power outage, it cuts everything that's kind of right of the gateway here, and kind of starts the Powerwall up. And if there's solar generation, that's also going to contribute. And then you're able to kind of operate for, 1 to 3 days or a specified number of days. I have this document that I could always send out after the meeting. It's kind of just, it's our indicative Powerwall proposal with 1, 2, and 3 Powerwalls specifications and kind of indicative pricing. I got a response this week that was like, I could buy a Tesla for the cost of 3 Powerwalls. So, I'm interested to hear any feedback, even just right now.
Tim, I'd love to get you to repeat what you said about in a backup mode that there is no cycle maximum, timeline on the Powerwall. That's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, the warranty terms for Canada say that because Powerwall has 2 modes of operation. One is backup mode, and the other one is kind of self-consumption mode. but in backup mode, it's not exactly cycling very often. So I just lost my screen. My screen went dark.
We're still seeing your screen. Yeah, no, I mean, that's perfect for if you're using it in backup mode with a sub panel, because, you know, that'd be the way I personally would choose to put in a Powerwall to keep sub panel essential items only going until the rest of the grid comes back up. Yeah, that's the way I'd want to do it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like we got our certified installer ticket end of 2019, and to date we've probably done, well, actually I don't really know because we've done a lot in the last like few months, but this winter we've gotten a pretty large uptake on them. But you know, it's the same thing. It's the long-term mindset that works for it. You know, you could get a generator for much less upfront, but I think the value proposition that a battery system like Tesla offers is really in the longevity of the components, right? You know, a typical generator warranty, I think like Kohler offers like an 18-month warranty. So, you know, you could look at going through quite a few generators before you reach that tenure that the Tesla Powerwall offers. And
And the Powerwall needs no maintenance.
yeah, no maintenance, and it's totally quiet. Less than 40 decibels is like the sound that you get. It's a little bit more than like a quiet library, a little bit under like a quiet office. So it's pretty quiet. It's really cool to monitor the system from your Tesla app. You're able to get notifications as to when there's a power outage. This is actually, I don't know if you guys will be able to see, but this is actually the Horn Lake project that I monitor all the time. You can kind of see the solar production, the Powerwall's output, and then the house's consumption. And then if the generator turns on, then you can see that. In a normal grid-tied system, you'd be able to see what's coming from the grid, but this is actually a generator in this case. And just the analytics of it all is really cool. You're really able to kind of interact with it and you know, monitor the state of charge of the battery. So, you know, if you opt for like one Powerwall, you know, it's going to depend again on the site and, you know, how many power outages you get and how often they are, to kind of determine what's the best fit.
You were asking Tim a bit about the Tesla cost of a Tesla sitting in your garage being the same as 3 Powerwalls, but until there's, or if indeed, if the technology gets offered where you can use the battery in your car as the Powerwall, then it's kind of a moot point. Like you're going to get from the Powerwall certain services that is not a car. But I can see that people have asked about car sharing, but Musk, I remember, it was at the battery day, he kind of spoke to the fact that he didn't think that was ideal, because if the power is out, chances are there's an issue. Possibly you need to get in your car and go, and you want the juice in your car, not in the house, flowing to the house or being emptied by the house. So he, as I recall, didn't think that was the best solution. Anyway, that's just my own personal opinion on that. We do have a fair number of people here asking for you to share that document that you fed up. So if you could do that even through the VicEVA site, I don't know, Jim, whatever the best way for that would be, but if you could share that would be great, Tim.
Yeah.
Tim, if there's a link you can pop into the chat, that would probably be the easiest.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can pop the link into the chat right now if that's possible.
I can do that. I just need to edit this guy's name out from the first page.
Yeah, fair enough. So while you guys have been talking, I don't mean to cut off and talk about battery Powerwalls or battery backup, but I've been accumulating a series of questions here, Tim. I'm wondering if we could go through these. There's about 6, and we can get on with back to the chat we're on right now. Jim Hill's asking, do you have Enphase? Do you work with Enphase on the software side? I guess I'm not sure what he's asking, but
Yeah, we just did an end phase system. We've done, I don't know, 3. Not very many.
Yeah, fair enough.
They're the Ferrari. So
Oh,
very price sensitive market, and you know, 97% of people are doing this for return. So with end phase, we're
right.
not necessarily able to yield a great of a return as we would with Solar Edge or with AP systems. But
I know Jim, he's quality all the way.
yeah, so
Hey,
we're unbiased and we'll work with anything.
Yeah, right on. There's been quite a price drop in the last 5 years, I'd say, right?
One thing I'll say is actually I didn't talk about ground mounts. So all that pricing was roof mounts.
Yes.
Ground mounts, this was a good chat that we had. Ground mounts are, I mean, they can be done a variety of ways. I know that Steve Unger and the guys at Viridian have a bit of a different approach than us. But we're typically using a galvanized steel rack or a very robust rack that's got engineered backing on it. And so it's fairly robust, way more robust than a roof mount. And so the racking cost is a lot higher for that hardware. And then there's trenching and cable running involved as well. So typically a ground mount now is around like 250 to 280 a watt, I want to say 285. Even $3 a watt. It depends on, you know, the length of the trench and conditions at the site. Again.
Yeah, well, that's still a little bit less than what I think I paid 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. I might speak at this point then, since we're on to ground mount, which is, by the way, folks, what I've got, because my roof doesn't qualify, it doesn't really suit it. It's too many angles and there's trees in the way. But they came up with a ground mount and I happen to have place for it, and it gets really good exposure to the sun. It cost me a roughly, I think it was about $21,000. The point I wanted to make is, real estate people I've talked to say anything with a solar system or any such kind of alternate energy production system, extra windows, and all that good environmental stuff you put on. But solar system tend to sell faster. This has also been based on a study in 2017 in the US by the Real Estate Association. Houses that would sell instead of what was the number? I think it was 22 days. They sell in something like 14 days instead. The conclusion being that you get your money back out. Now, I'm not going to, I haven't studied that intimately, but I've heard that from many people who agree with me. If that's true, that means your investment is safe. I say it's safe, like, I don't know, a GIC, let's say. Well, I can save $900 a year. That's roughly 45% of my hydro bill. That works out to roughly 4.5%, let's say even as high as 5%, depending on how much I get sunshine I get that year on my 21,000. Now, if it's true that I get my money back in I don't know, say 10 years, 15 years, if I sell the thing, where I'm getting 5% return on my money, that's safe. That's better than anything else out there right now, except Tesla shares, of course. But anyway, the point is there's very little risk. In the meanwhile, I've got this good thing happening, and it's the right thing for me. This takes care of 40% of my house load, which includes my cars, 100% of my driving with 2 EVs. So I thought I'd throw that in. There's another question here then. Oh, there's my ground mount system right now. Those trees behind, by the way, Tim, now are gone. The neighbors bought the house next door and took down all those wild old cedar, crazy overgrown things. So I get a lot better return. I got 7.7 kilowatts, megawatts last year, and Shift had projected 6.4, 6.5. And these guys like to aim a little low. I know that, because they don't want to oversell. And that's, I appreciate that. But I was expecting maybe 7. I got 7.7 so far in the past year. There's another question about weight and roof load, Tim.
Yeah, I just want to point out that I checked the proposal. It was 305 a watt back then.
Oh, that's not so bad.
Yeah. Roof load is I mean, this comes down to why we install systems the way we do now, I guess. For the most part, we do flush mounted systems where the panels are flush to the roof. 3 to 5 inch gap between the back of the panels and the roof plane. With that, you end up with the perfect amount of space for air to passively flow and keep the panels somewhat cool. Contrarily to popular belief, heat is not a good thing for solar panels, even though they're rated for like very high number of degrees Celsius. They're going to lose like 0.3% efficiency every degree they are over 25 degrees. It's kind of interesting. But having them flush to the roof means you don't need quite as much to hold them down because they're subject to less wind uplift forces. And as such, you're looking at global loading of about 3 pounds per square foot, typically under that. On flat roof systems, we typically do ballast or sometimes direct attached, depending on the situation. So direct attached, again, is going to be about 3 pounds a square foot. Lately, I've actually, the calculations that I've done for a few projects that have gone through like building permits and structural engineering are like 2.62, 2.67 PSF. So a little bit under. Ballasted systems on flat roofs will be around 5 to 10 pounds a square foot. So a little bit heavier.
Right on. The panel ground mount that you see there has been broken in now and is cluttered with garden utensils, wheelbarrows, netting, stakes, all kinds of stuff I use for my gardening, which is all around in the yard. So it functions as a semi-protected garden shed, tool shed, really. I actually have a table under a little part of it at this end, which I can use for preparing pots and soils and so on. And so it's really handy and a functional item, and it has meant I did not need to build a garden shed. So you consider that, and it's. There's another question that when you talk about the clearance, which allows for air movement, presumably, but I don't know how. What about moss growing under there? And then I would think of if it does develop, like what about for maintenance, for access, for cleaning, and such like.
Yeah, that's a question that's actually on my list to thoroughly research this year. And that's all I can really say because I haven't done the full amount of research on it yet. I haven't to date. We haven't had any clients come back and say there's moss growing under. I will.
Fair enough.
That typically when you're putting solar on the roof, you're focusing on the sunnier sides, and so the sunnier sides of the roof typically don't get very much growth, and there is still room for air to circulate. There's a 3/4 inch air gap between panels, between one panel and another, and then you've got the gap between the roof itself and the panels. So it's not like you're totally encapsulating the shingles or the roof by any means.
Yeah, and ongoing, I'll watch my neighbors. I can look out a window and see his 12 kilowatt system on his low slope membrane roof, which you guys put up last summer. The other question I have here is how many spaces on the panel are you looking at and what amperage for the feed into the panel from the solar generator?
Spaces typically at least 1 2-pole breaker, right up to, I don't know, 3 or 4 2-pole breakers. We can always, if the panel is getting tight, we can always use a combiner before we hit the panel, and then we can dial it back to like 1 2-pole breaker. So at the very least a 2-pole breaker.
Right on. I think I've caught up on the questions on the chat aspect here. Yeah, I've caught up on the questions. If you want to carry on with something else, or anybody else want to speak up with a question, feel free to type in the chat if you are shy.
I do have a question, Tim. Do you sell now a TBar that covers up the gap, or is that a ventilation problem? Or rubber seal, so David doesn't get wet in his new garden shed?
The rubber seal, like between the panels?
Yes.
Yeah, I've looked at that.
TBar, and a TBar that goes over it, or some kind of seal that makes it a workable roof. a usable roof.
right? Like kind of like a weather stripping.
That's
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah. So is that a specific product that you're asking about?
No, I was wondering if the industry now provides that, and if they didn't provide it because there is a ventilation problem between the panels, you need the ventilation to cool the panels down.
Well, so typically, so short answer is yes, there are quite a few providers for like a weather stripping like that. But typically you apply them in like a carport situation or like a pergola situation where, you know, the panels are open to free air behind them. There would be no use in installing that on a roof.
And Tim, I've got a new question here. What are the, do you have the dimensions, the ground dimensions of that ground mount system at my place?
Roughly 12 by 27.
Yeah,
And then
good, thank you.
13 feet tall, I want to say.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That number comes into my head. How about the cost of, sorry?
About as tall as me.
Yeah, they are quite tall. And I will say that as a garden shed, it's from the outside, right? Because the ground mount piping runs around. So you can't, there's no doorway into that garden shed. I can step over it, but it's really a kind of a reach-in affair. But anyway, what about the cost of most efficient panels now?
Cost of most efficient panels now.
The-
We're now quoting, for the most part, we've got a container that just arrived to 445 watt Canadian solar panels. Last quarter, we were using 435 watt Longies. So those kind of advancements from the last bunch of like 385s and 390s and 395s are kind of responsible for you know, getting our pricing down to where it is now.
Are the 445 larger or the same size?
They're marginally larger. They're like 83 by 41 and a half.
So you have trouble fitting them to existing systems.
Yeah, we might not. It depends. Like the 385s, like the 72 cells were 80 by 40 for the most part. So it's a little bit bigger, but if you've got like an arrangement of 60 cell panels, those are typically about 65 or 66 by 40. So, you know, in that case, it would probably make more sense to, like, if you were refurbishing an old system, they still have newer set 60 cell panels and like the 335 and 340 watt power densities.
Awesome. Mine are 385s, by the way, Fred. The 100-kilometer winds here, John's asking, that we get out of the southeast, they hit this thing pretty hard because we're sort of exposed on the edge of our property to those winds. But John's asking here, what about it? And what about on older roofs? Do you need supplementary tie down, or do you want to speak about that a little bit?
Up on the screen.
So just need to pull something up. Move this over. Can you guys see this drawing? Okay.
Yes.
So the key with accounting for wind loads is to use engineered components and drawings that this, for example, is using wind and snow and seismic design loads for Surrey. This is a project in Surrey. And so, you know, wind, snow, and seismic are obviously design factors. And so by, you know, having a plan to go off of demonstrating, you know, the attachment spacing here, this can vary based on design loads and snow loads and the type of panels you use. Some cases you've got a max cantilever of 12 inches or 8 inches, and sometimes you might have to install your anchorage into the roof every 24 as opposed to 48 inches. So I guess the response here would simply be that we're not just making stuff up. It's all engineered. So
Yeah,
and
very good.
additional tie downs for an older roof.
And that ground mount thing, I had those really cool little plugs that got driven into the ground. It took them about 10 minutes per plug. There was 6 or 8 of them, I think.
Yeah,
I quite remember.
There with the Osprey power platform or any other like racking that we use, we're like with your system, we had to test every earth anchor for their tensile strength and shear strength and whatnot, and meet a specific like design requirement that was outlined in their engineering document. So every can you guys see my Google screen here?
Yes, sir.
Every jurisdiction in BC has a different, say if we look at Victoria, we have, this is climatic design data for selected locations in BC. And we've got our snow load, our hourly wind pressures. This 1 in 50 is basically worst or highest wind pressure for the location 1 in 50 years versus 1 in 10 years. SR is your load from rain and load from snow. It's kind of interesting. We have very comparable snow loads to Alberta, and it's because if we do get a dump of snow, it's likely to be followed by rain, and so you can actually end up with a pretty heavy snow load. Like Victoria region down here, say Mount Tolmie, 2.1 plus 0.3 kPa downforce load. There's 20.88 pounds per square foot to a kPa. So you're looking at like a 50 pounds per square foot load. And that's kind of, this is an important number to keep in mind, because when you compare that to the amount of weight we're actually adding to the roof with solar panels, it's a pretty small number. It's less than 10% of the overall snow load here. Then if we look at Victoria, it's quite a bit lower there at lower altitude. But
so the existence of the panels is not increasing the threat of the roof getting ripped off in case of an old roof that doesn't have tie downs, proper tie downs or strapping. Isn't something new done? I guess that's what John's getting at.
Yeah, so we're anchoring into the rafters, into the trusses.
Yeah.
Not just,
not just the sheeting, obviously.
So, well, sometimes we're going into the sheething, but then it's typically 1/2 inch ply or whatever, and then again we have an engineering document to kind of follow to tell us how many screws and whatnot.
Okay, and so
this might be a good opportunity to talk about the insurance with regards to penetrations on roof.
The assurance or the insurance?
The insurance.
Insurance.
Like from shift or from like home insurance?
Well, the home warranty programs often will, avoid a warranty if there's a roof penetration, but you guys insure that roof penetration. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I wouldn't necessarily. I don't know if insurance is the right word, but warranty for sure. Like the product we install, for example, the RT Mini has a 25-year warranty on that, and that's an attachment bracket that we use 9 months of the year when it's not raining.
So,
Yeah.
You just can't install it in the rain, but it'll last in the rain. It needs to set in when it's dry. But
yeah. So
but yeah.
the point being that any of the penetrations that you guys put in, you warranty that those won't leak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's penetrations are a solar contractor's greatest liability. And if we had a reason not to sleep at night, it would be that.
Yeah.
So it's something that we take super seriously. On most metal roofs, we don't really do any penetrations at all. We have these brackets. I have one right here that clamp right onto the seams of the metal roof. And then there's the rounded tips that screw in there that basically presses against the seam without penetrating it. So these are kind of interesting. The RT mini solar attachment is one that we use a lot on bitumen roofs and shingle roofs. And this is pretty much what it looks like. It's a on the back here, this black stuff is self-sealing butyl, and that's what they warranty for 25 years. And this, at first, it looks a little daunting because you're not putting a flashing under the shingles. But after doing all the research, these are actually the best attachments out there because they're one of the few guys that actually warranty it for 25 years. But I've got lots of documentation on that. And again, like I would say 40% of our clients are probably asking those very detailed types of questions about how we're anchoring into the roof. And so I think it's detail that might not fascinate everybody. So I don't want to get too far into the nitty gritty, but I'm more than happy to, follow up with anybody individually to kind of talk about the best attachment method for their roof.
If you want to install solar panels in a multi-unit complex, can you put it on a single unit or would you have to put it on the whole complex?
We could do single unit. Is it a condo or is it townhouses?
It's townhouses, single story townhouses, lots of roof exposure.
Yeah. Glenn would be one example. I think there's, probably an approval process to go through on that end. But we can definitely do it. Yeah.
And conversely, can you also do it for the whole complex if everybody agreed?
Yep. Yeah, we just finished a 36 townhouse project in Royal Oak, and then we've got another 28 townhouse project this year happening in Richmond. So we're up to speed on how to deliver those.
Thank you.
Can we drive by that Royal Oak one? Is that Victoria?
Yeah.
Can we drive by and see it at some point?
Yeah, we gotta post a picture of it soon.
Cool.
But I think we have a somewhat recent picture of it. It's just right now it's kind of that time of year where it's hard to get good pictures of installs. So we haven't been using drone very much. But this was like I think halfway through.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, so that was 4-panel system on each unit designed to generate enough electricity through net metering to offset the usage associated with one EV charger driving 10,000 kilometers a year.
Nicely done. Just going back to the roof attachment thing. So I guess you should plan your new roof scheduling around. It's a bit of a job to take the whole system off the roof, reshingle it and put it back on. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a big job.
So you'd want to plan that new roof, maybe at an opportune time, put the solar on with it. Especially if an older roof that's ready to change up, it might be. We put a new roof on ours. It wasn't connected to that, but we just thought, you know what, the time get rid of the roof problem. We put on a metal roof and then just decided to forget about it for the rest of our days.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, a
costs a
lot
bit
of people
extra,
seem
but
to be opting for metal, but there's also there's a lot of this is you know, it's everybody's got their own opinion, and you know, you got a mixed bag of reviews on metal versus asphalt debate, that's for sure. Then we've installed on some other roofing products like this. This one here was actually like a recycled rubber shingle. So we've done like quite a few different roof types. A lot of it's metal. This was an interesting one here where it was mounted on like a pergola that the homeowner built, and basically just cover for his chicken coop and a few things. And you know, he said he was generating a little power with the Christmas lights he had hung up on that thing this winter, but
cute. Cool.
yeah.
I think I would trust your system in a hurricane more than anything I ever built myself. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's tough. There is, you know, it's like the solar industry in Alberta, for example, went from like 30 companies to 300 in the matter of months when the government a couple of years ago brought to life a cash incentive, and it's sort of a daunting thing to think about that many companies jumping into an industry right when there's an incentive, because you know, not everybody is going to be doing things right, and not everybody is going to be really in it for the long-term growth of the industry. So that's why I'm pretty stoked about how you know, we have really good competitors, and we have competitors that I think do horrendous work, and it is what it is, and I don't want to name anybody in particular, but it's out there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's pretty cool the amount of work that that has taken place in the last few years with no, you know, government incentives whatsoever.
Right on. Ian, you have a question to ask Ian Conybeer? I'm sorry, I don't see the pictures, the faces, but anyway.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, Tim, can you solar tracking? What do you think of that? How well suited is solar tracking for Vancouver Island?
Yeah, good question. I was actually just looking at the a few tracking options last week, and I don't think that it's really at a state yet where the price premium justifies itself with the extra generation. For example, you might see like 30 to 40, maybe 50% more power with the same amount of kilowatts. But for that system, you're going to pay well over 3 times more. So there's no doubt that trackers are being deployed on utility scale systems. And in that, you know, in that kind of parallel of the industry, they definitely flourish, and they're flourishing more and more. But I don't think that it's at a place yet where we could have a client say, look, I want to save money on my hydro bill. And we'd come back and say, okay, we're going to install a solar tracker. We'll do one when the client comes to us and says, hey, I want a solar tracker. I don't care what it costs. I think it's cool. I want to do it. I want to be, you know, on the front end of new tech, and can you do it for me? And in that case, we'll say, yeah. And then we might say, you know, but you could do this for much less, but, you know, doing a tracker would be pretty cool.
How robust are those systems? Are they, I mean, when I'm thinking about wind load, like we've had some horrendous winds here lately. I imagine that's only going to get worse as time passes. How robust are they?
Yeah, it's something that's just built to suit the site. So, you know, you're gonna be, or as part of our design process, we would be gathering the climatic design data for the site and reporting that to the engineers so that, the foundation for it and, the post structure and the clamping is all designed to withstand the local loads.
Okay, thank you.
Super cool. Questions, keep them coming. Anyone else? Well, we've gone over an hour now. That's good, Tim. You've held it up and you're still here.
Anything like this. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. It's really good. Can I clarify quickly the cost per panel? Somebody does ask that. That's how a lot of people I know ask me and think about it. You're talking about $1.95 to $2.40 per watt installed price. Is that correct?
Yeah.
In general? Okay, so whoever asked that question, you multiply that price, $1.95, say $2 times the number of watts per panel. Now those panels are now at what size? Are you saying 435 watt?
445.
445.
Yeah.
And mine are 385, and I waited a couple of months for those to come in because they were just brand new, hot, shot off the press.
There are bifacials too. Yours, I think, right?
Something like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, inevitably, technology is going to change. I've got the iPhone 11 here, and there's an iPhone 12 now, which
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I've had the benefits of an iPhone 11. So I think like we're at a point now where the technology is advancing at a rate that's actually kind of slower than it used to be. And like, sure, we have 445s now, David, but you've also saved whatever, a year and a half of electricity in that time. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not like the cost per watt of the systems has changed that much,
That's right. So since return on investment is so much better than your GIC, cash those GICs, put in the panels and make money. Do it now. Don't wait.
Yeah. There's
I get
cost of waiting, which that's a term that Colin, my boss, kind of taught me because his background's finance.
right.
Obviously, the technical side is kind of where my expertise lie. But yeah, cost per panel, I don't really know if that's relevant for us because we're not an equipment wholesaler, so we don't sell individual panels. So I'm not sure what the going rate would be for panels these days for a consumer to buy them. We're just
Yeah.
not that way.
Well, we're not as innovative as Fred there, who scrounged from the dump bins behind HES downtown there. I think, didn't you get some cracked panels for cheap there, Fred? And then rope them up yourself, or what? Is he still around?
He has disappeared from his screen, so he's just taking a break from us for a minute.
He's gonna go put some panels back on his roof that just fell off.
Probably up. Oh yeah, I can see him from here. He's up on the roof remeasuring. So
Fred just did his own system. I don't know how many. He's got a whack of panels. He's put them on every slope on his house. He doesn't care what kind of exposure. He picked up a lot of ends and rejects, and if there's a little bit of a damage to the panel, he was able to convince some supplier in town to give them to him. So he did it all himself for super cheap. I'm not recommending that for anyone, by the way, but that is what Fred did, and it's quite a remarkable thing that he was able to do that. He is, by the way, got some certification for doing such things. He's not a complete do-it-yourselfer, so don't be too frightened for him. But he's done that, started that up years ago, and as he got panels, he kept adding more.
Fred is the bleeding edge.
Yeah, the bleeding edge is right. Yeah.
I should ask him for a job.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, I think he probably sold a few solar systems in that over his time, convincing people to power their EVs on electric sun juice. That's what we do. It's a great feeling. You get that good feeling. You get into your new EV, you're driving down the road and you go, wow, there's something different going on here. It almost feels like the hand from above coming and pushing you down the road. Well, when you fill your battery with solar power and you realize there's sunshine in that battery. It's a great feeling all over again, like another whole layer of excitement I found. And you have your own little utility because your power generation is on your side of the meter. And so nobody knows how much you're using or how much you're producing. They don't know.
Yeah, they
They can only
measure-
gauge what's coming in and what's going out. They don't know what's happening in before it. And that's when you're tied to the grid, they can't know.
Yeah.
They can guess. And it's a very nice, liberating feeling is what I'm getting at, to have your own little mini utility.
And
I like it.
speaking of strata, so I'm going to be the first in our unit of about 14 units here to go this way, and a lot of people are very interested. They're not willing to take the jump. People will drop 35 grand on a car they use for 5 years and then throw away. But they somehow can't see spending 15 or 17 grand for solar that stays up there for 30 plus years. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be the first, and then I'm pretty sure I won't be the last.
Anybody who doesn't have gray hair should be definitely putting in solar. But those of us who are 70 years of age looking at a 40-year panel will be 110.
Yeah, you got 20 years left, David. Then you should put it up there too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it just gives you a reason to live. Come on.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you
go
go.
for 220.
Think
It's-
of your kids, Dave or Bruce.
I don't even have cats, let alone children.
I'm going to ask Tim here. Just I don't know where this popped in from. I think it was Jim Henshaw's backdrop picture there. I didn't know you had that much room in your backyard for all those panels. Anyway, there's the whole idea of community solar farms, right? Where you would perhaps have a shared piece of land, or a municipality has a hunk of land. I know the city of Colwood's got an absolutely gorgeous spot for a really nice big installation, which, you know, one engineer I talked to figured 5,000 panels would fit in there. And BC Hydro said, oh yeah, you can hook that onto the grid. It's like a megawatt system. It was really cool, but of course the developer just didn't want to talk about it. So we'll see if that goes anywhere. Is there anything going on that way, Tim? I'm thinking in terms of like Tesla. I just read this, that they do a virtual grid setup as well. So you've got houses with solar panels and batteries tied to the grid, and then the software you hook onto it, and it's kind of like a virtual utility where they draw and load to battery as they see fit. Apparently there's one fired up. I think it's in New Jersey or someplace.
I think they have one in Australia too.
Yeah,
Doing
that's
it
right.
in
That's
Australia.
yeah,
Yeah,
Australia
Tesla's
was
doing it in Australia.
inspired.
Yeah. And
There too, yeah.
Closer to Vancouver, the city of New Westminster has put solar panels on one of their community centers and solar panels on their community works yard. The city of New Westminster has its own power supply because New Westminster buys power from BC Hydro and sells it to the residents of New Westminster. So everybody who lives in New Westminster buys power from the city of New Westminster. So one of our guys who's a VicEVA member, Bill MacArthur, has something in the neighborhood of 20 panels that he's bought as part of this solar panel initiative. So maybe there's got to be another municipality that would do something like this. This is just a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I heard about those projects in New West. I think a lot of it comes down to policy and red tape, and yeah, I mean, all that stuff gets publicly tendered, right? So if it was publicly tendered, we know about it. But as far as I know, you know, we've bid schools. We've got a couple of school projects. One is going to be Peck System School, is actually up the street from here. 30 and 40 kilowatts on an elementary and middle school around the corner from here, slated for 2021, 22.
Seriously.
Another community center in I guess it's called Gorge Pavilion, where we've been awarded the solar contract for 50 kilowatts, and they keep pulling it out and putting it back. So you know, there's lots of that going on. You know, we've got like 75 kilowatts slated on a mixed use purpose-built rental in Squamish that's going to happen this year. But as far as like the whole microgrid thing, nothing on our radar right now that I would say is like for sure going to be going ahead with construction, but lots of design and project development discussions for sure.
Right on. I do have a question here about, since we're talking panels, the power supply from, the panels rather from Tesla. Do you know much about those? I guess they have two, don't they? They have their solar roof, but they also have that. They have certain panels they make. Anyway, I'll let you speak to it.
Yeah, Tesla has their solar panels, and then they've got the Tesla solar roof. Solar roof, I think like start of last year was being deployed, like they were saying they'd deploy it in every state. And then since then they've kind of pushed back on it and they're only doing it, I think, in 3 states. So I think it's still a while before we see that stuff coming up this way. However, I do have a sample. A little dusty, but this black panel here is actually an integrated solar metal roofing panel from a company in Eastern Europe, and we're currently in the process of getting that product certified for Canada.
Oh, sick. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. That's very exciting. I'm just going to keep throwing these questions as they pop in, try to stay on top of them. Insurance issues. Anybody like, does it affect rates, homeowner rates, issues about companies hesitant to cover a house with solar panels on, anything like that?
I think there's been hesitation. We've had to kind of chime in a little bit with a few clients and their insurance providers, kind of explaining some of the installation methods and like safety features that are built into some of the power equipment, namely like inverters and panels nowadays. As far as home insurance goes, though, Jeff Kendrew put a good post in his Solar Vancouver Island Facebook group, talking about the added cost for putting the cost of the solar system on his like risk loss policy, and it was like, I want to say it was like maybe $20 or $50 a year or something like that. Like
Tim is talking about solar panels. No,
somebody's not muted. Paul, could you mute up there while you're chatting, please? Thanks. That's perfect. Good. Thanks. Sorry.
I can speak a bit to it in that our strata went out because we're in the throes of doing this. They went out to our insurer, said, "Hey, we're thinking about doing solar panels." They went, "Okay, what's the question?" They weren't concerned.
Well, unlike the Royal Bank, they wouldn't sell me a policy because I have solar panels on the roof. They wanted a disclaimer from Hydro, which is totally ridiculous. So I would be careful what insurance company you go with, or if you have, inquire whether they will. You've been lucky.
Yeah.
Just have to make sure your insurance company isn't bankrolling the tar sands.
Right. Yeah. We should all change banks, I guess.
Yeah. This is great. This has been great. You know, we're running pretty much at 2:30. We're an hour and a half into what is kind of becoming our official length of time here. This conversation, please, can carry on depending on Tim's willingness to stay forever, and likewise anybody else for that matter. I want to just thank Tim right now for this fabulous opportunity to pick your brains on all things solar, and it installs very nicely done. Right on. And yeah, really appreciate it. You said you didn't have anything to put up screen, but you came along with all kinds of really interesting photos, and the drawings. Technical side is really important for everyone.
I particularly like the image of Glenn's house that proves he does live under a rock.
Yeah, I know, and all that green stuff. But it was a very great learning experience. There's items coming up on chat here, Tim. Thanking you from individuals.
Thanks, Don. I've chatted with Don before. Yeah, I mean, this was totally organic, which was kind of nice. You know, right off the cuff. It's nice to have the opportunity to chat with everybody here. I appreciate your guys' patience with my kind of constant response of it's depends, because nobody likes that as like a response to a question, but there really are a lot of variables to this stuff, and so this was my first presentation like this where I'm answering questions that I get all the time, but answering the question to a bunch of different people that, you know, the actual response might be totally different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well, I thought you handled that really well, and I would disagree. I didn't sense at all that thing. I was really actually quite pleased with how transparent and direct you were with the information. If there's anything else, Tim, you'd like to add, do you feel you've left anything out, or you'd like to say something in closing?
I think that, no, I mean, if you guys ever want to do this again, more than happy to. You know, these are the types of conversations I think that are positive for the growth of the solar industry. If you want to go solar, contact me, contact Shift, and inevitably, you know, we'd be happy to help, and I'd be happy to answer anybody's questions with you know, more curated response. I can send out that indicative Powerwall proposal after the fact, and I'll send that to Jim, and you can distribute it, and then my contact info will be there. And as far as like solar proposals go, they are very individualized, so I don't really have anything that's like totally generic for that. But
yeah,
like I mentioned, you know, utility bill pretty much is a good place to start for getting a quick proposal, high level.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, Tim, if it's still the same process you go through, I inquired, you followed up with feasibility, then I instructed you that I was interested, and you went ahead with a more formal proposal, including a price, folks. So to that point, I spent no money, but there was a sort of a two-step thing there. First contact, then you, and then when I said, then you get a little more serious, and you come out and you did a little thing with your gadget to figure sunshine, etc., trees.
Yeah.
You want to speak to that little process so people understand it really is a painless thing to connect, but there is a point where money talk starts.
Yeah, typically we're quoting now with COVID and everything, we're asking a little bit more questions on the phone and through emails.
Yeah.
And quoting pretty much like fixed cost quotes without necessarily coming to site. However, if you know, there's valid reasons to come and validate site conditions, like for yours, David, a ground mount, you know, we're trenching, we're doing a cable run, and there was trees around too that were a factor. So, you know, depending on the nature of the project and the imagery that we see and the amount of information we can communicate through, you know, emails or phone calls or text or whatever, that's kind of how we determine whether or not a site visit's necessary. Our software measures roofs pretty much within inches for the most part. I have tested it out time and time again. You know, a site visit's always something that we enforce before any money gets exchanged to validate site conditions, regardless of the fact. So a little bit more on our process, but yeah.
Yeah, right on. And Don,
you know, I think Darcy's got his hand up actually there.
Yeah. Okay, Darcy, go ahead.
Hi there. I did a little quick calculation here because I heard you guys talking about the EVs. And so I've had my solar system for 2.5 years, and I've driven my electric car 20,000 kilometers so far, and that would be about 3,000 kilowatt hours, according to what it cost me to fill up my battery. So, I mean, I've generated 27 megawatt hours so far. So that would be equivalent to 180,000 kilometers driven. So it's super, I mean, it's amazing how much energy you can generate to do this. It's super, I mean, I'm super thrilled about it.
Yeah.
And by the way, I just installed Starlink the other day. I'm done this whole call over the satellite internet.
Wow.
And it goes a little bit wonky occasionally, but it's been pretty good.
Now there's a great topic for Electric Vehicle Association to have Darcy talk about what's involved in Starlink.
Where are you?
Duncan.
Cool. So you're isolated.
There you go, Darcy. Send your particulars to Henshaw, and we'll sign you up for this abuse.
Well, yeah, sure, I could do that.
Oh, anyway, that'd be great.
Just type your email into the chat room, Darcy, and I'll have it.
Thanks.
So you just download electricity when you need it from the satellite.
Exactly.
Well, I actually think the guys at the Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association might be interested in hearing Darcy's experience with his Starlink also. Darcy, my name is Bruce Stout. If you could send me your contact information, your email address, that'd be just great. I'd appreciate that. Just send it through the chat, please.
Sure, I'll do that.
Great. Now you're setting up an auction for the guy's services. You're gonna drive the price up, Bruce.
Hey, look, he's priceless, so we know that.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, I'll do that. Thanks.
So Tim, this has been wonderful. Like I said, again, we've killed another 10 minutes, but I'd just like to sort of sign you off, just to feel free to move on. And I just want to thank you again so much on behalf of everyone. What a great job you've done, and bringing solar to the island is really an awesome. Darcy just sent his contact up on the chat line for those. And so Tim, anything we can do on our end too to help spread the good word about solar energy, because that is part of our mandate and we do like to do it. We have to be careful about supporting specifically any in particular companies, but the board is working on discussing sponsorship for the website and stuff like that too. So you never know, we might come back. But meanwhile, my thanks very much.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
I think as a voice, your guys' association shouldn't necessarily be endorsing anybody in particular. At the end of the day, with solar, people shop around and people are gonna, go with whoever they're most comfortable with. No doubt about it. But yeah, I mean, thanks again, everybody, for listening me ramble on. I am extremely passionate about this stuff, and I could stick around and talk about it much longer, but I'm being asked by the girlfriend when I'm wrapping up and going home. So, could probably sign off here soon and hopefully connect with some of you guys again in the future.
Well, I know I'd like to keep in touch, and I think everyone else would agree with me. Hopefully you'll be seeing more rooftops sometime in the near future.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Tim.
You're welcome, and thank you. Thanks, Tim. Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend.
Yeah, that was first class. Thanks, guys.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Bruce. Thanks for your contribution. Well, thank you all for your contribution. That was awesome. The questions flowed through the chat there, really nice pace. And I thought there was a nice wide variety of contribution. I did tell him beforehand that was a very civilized crowd and that none of you wore mega hats. So I'm glad to see you left those off.
Well, and we're exactly the right people to ask, because, he was saying, well, a lot of things, it depends. And of course, those are the first two words in any discussion about electric vehicles. Well, it depends.
Yeah.
All that said, does anybody have anything related they want to share before we wrap it up?
Verbal there. Anything? Yes. Club
related.
Solar.
We have vehicle decals for the inside of your car.
Ah,
We'll
shoot, yeah.
deliver them electrically to anywhere. But you can't see the asterisk down here. Anywhere we can, we'll deliver $7 each or 2 for 10. And that helps go towards our activities when we get them going again. We also are looking at doing, as we did with provincial election, where we went out to all the political parties and said, hey, here are 10 different things you can do that the electric vehicle voters would be in favor of. Bear that in mind. There's a sticker there. We're also putting together a similar item for the, no doubt, somewhere in this year, we'll probably see a federal election. So putting together those things, if you have any ideas, write them up, send them in, and Jim will fire them to me, and I'll take those on as part of government engagement. We have a, I was going to call it a dirty dozen. We have a clean dozen so far that we're going to go forward with, but I'd like any of your input as well.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. Glenn's been working on this and did it for the province. I missed the preamble there. Glenn, did you mention that?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that went over really well. This federal element. Hopefully, we can get these guys, different groups across the country, to sign on. I think that's your intention. And I've seen a list of this dirty dozen, clean dozen already, and it looks really good. We are starting, just for your own information, because some of you are interested in the hydrogen thing, we are starting to input a little bit of reference to FCEV and fuel cell electric vehicles and some of that in terms of making our dislike for that whole process known. We are starting to include that. Is that right, Glenn?
Yeah. There's we have it as association policy. We cannot support hydrogen, certainly not gray hydrogen, and we haven't seen the economic or environmental reasoning that means that blue or green would even be acceptable. So we're going forward, non-hydrogen. Always willing to listen to somebody if you've got a better argument. Haven't seen one so far based on the data that is available. So we're officially not supporting anything hydrogen. And if there's government money going into it, we're really not onto that.
Right on.
Well, there's lots of money going into it, and they're getting ready to pour millions into it, I'm afraid. And I really think they're buying a pig in a poke.
How do you feel about it, John? How do you feel about hydrogen?
I just sent an email called Bust Clean BC's Biofuel Scam to David and Jim. Somebody just sent this to me about government released Clean BC, blah, 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 which revealed the greenhouse gas emissions from transportation, blah, 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 blah. That's all about biofuel. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but I think you might find that interesting reading. Same idea.
Yeah. The other scam is carbon neutral fuels from schemes like carbon engineering, which only work when you get north of $200 per per ton of carbon fees, which we're not going to see until 2030 with the current plan, which means never. So,
but what do you guys think of the Fed's announcing the 170, which, by the way, is what 170 a ton in 10 years' time or 9 years' time, as opposed to that's what Sweden has already had for several years now.
well, I'll go my personal opinion. What Sweden and the other Scandinavian countries found was that nobody actually makes changes until you are somewhere north of $200 US a ton, and they'd figured that out by about 2015. So you do the math, Canadian, $170 by 2030 with all the inflation, that is sweet FA. So it's not enough to actually achieve the aim. Now, if they, well, and carbon fees are never enough to achieve the entire aim. They have to be they have to be part of a suite of other policies, such as mandates, such as incentives, other things to shift people away. But they are a way to use market forces to push the externalities of dirty fuels out of the market. So they got to be serious.
I just sent a link to this BC biofuel scam in the chat for those of you who want to read it.
Oh,
Thanks, Bruce.
thanks, Bruce.
And the other thing, we had a bit of a discussion today at the VIVA meeting was, once upon a time you didn't own an electric vehicle. What got you interested in an electric vehicle? What made you get out of a gasoline powered car? What was the pivotal moment that got you interested in buying an electric vehicle or trying an electric vehicle? And that's what we've got to try and figure out right now to get more people into these electric vehicles. What was the pivotal moment that made them get into the vehicle or discover that, hey, this could work?
I'll field a bit of that. I wanted to drive something that was cheaper and cleaner. So once I figured out how a Toyota Prius worked, and then I went, okay, so I'm using half the gas of a car this size. Why the hell isn't everything on the road, especially heavy transport? Why aren't they doing this as well? And then things like, well, frankly, the Nissan Leaf came along, and I went, huh, so it can be done. And it was, and by then I'd truly started working on my dislike of the fossil fuel industry and everything it's been doing to us for decades. And I went, yeah, screw them.
I can give my testimonial. I'm the son of a preacher man. I always loved electric vehicles from a kid. I don't know why. I thought I'll never see, by the time I was 40 years old, 45 at the latest, I'd given up hope that I'd ever see a commercially available electric car in my life. One day I'm at the bakery, 5:00 a.m. coffee break after working for a few hours. I open up the Times columnist. There's a full page ad for a test drive event with a Nissan Leaf. After picking myself up off the floor and phoning and booking through their message service, I went down and I had a list of 5 things I was concerned about. And I never left to pull the piece of paper out of my pocket, because I got to the car, I looked at it, went, wow, that looks like a real car. I get in the car, little preamble with the sales rep, Andrew, at the time. And we started the car and we drove away, and I was just blown away. My biggest worry was the pedal. I grew up in Toronto, and the street cars were electric, and they would go tick, 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 and they jerk. And I thought, oh shit, yeah, electric car is great, but if it's going to go tick, tick, jerk, jerk, it's not going to be fun to drive. Well, we all know the answer to that. It's the smoothest accelerator I've lived with now for 9 years. I'm in my 10th year with that car, and it's still the way the day I bought it. There's no floppiness. There's no looseness in the clutch. There's no wear in the automatic transmission. There's no hesitation. There's no stalling out and starting again. It's just smooth as silk. So when I just saw it, sorry?
How many kilometers have you got on it, and what's your battery status?
Just under 60,000. I've still got 10, or yeah, I've only lost 2 bars. Just lost the second bar about a month ago.
Yeah, I've just lost 1 bar. I'm at 61 or 62,000 now. So
look in your closet under the sock pile.
This may be a little out of left field, but I'm wondering, while we still have Bruce here, David, is there anything worth, with regard to promoting electric vehicles, that maybe we officially ask VIVA to stop putting things like hydrogen trains on their website and their Facebook?
We have a president by the name of John Stonier.
I understand that, but I'm wondering if
who's running for president again, unopposed.
Oh, okay.
Now, fortunately, we have a treasurer who's new to the business, and a secretary that understands that hydrogen doesn't make sense, and she's running unopposed. we have 6 other people that will be hopefully elected as the other members of the board of directors. One of them, I believe, is an electrician who's been involved in installing the power part of the hydrogen fueling stations, and a couple of other people who I think are intelligent enough to recognize that hydrogen doesn't make sense. That's our challenge at VicEVA right now.
What it would do if other EV associations in BC were to contact VicEVA and say, hey, you're not helping.
Well, I think what you need to do is anybody can join VicEVA. It's a $25 membership to be a member. Our annual general meeting and election of the board of directors is January the 19th. So find your $25, come on board, join the organization, and come to the annual general meeting, and we will be voting. There's 8 people running for the 6 seats as board of directors, and I'm one of those 8 people. So you can have a look at the write-up on the various people who are on the board of directors or vying for the board of directors. That's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do is, as an electric vehicle organization, the Victoria Electric Vehicle Organization, who has the advantage of talking to the government, because the government is in Victoria, is making sure that the government realizes that this is totally bogus. And you know, let's face it, government people are just the same as you and I. We do things for people we like. And if you're not abrasive, if you're just nice people and you make friends with these people, they're going to do things for their friends. And that doesn't mean you have to be a donor to the party. It just means you have to have good relationships with people and help them understand these things. Because you know damn well the fossil fuel guys are in the door all the time promoting their stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot of people trying to justify LNG and the good things that can come from it, which of course is hydrogen. That has the sway. A lot of the people who have a technical background on the bureaucracy side were, you know, the people who 20 years ago, like I was, thought, yeah, hydrogen. This is how we're going to eviscerate the fossil fuel world.
But there's also people on a public service who think hydrogen is a complete hoax, including the guy who's executive director of their climate strategy.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's the only part of the paper I did last year that they bought into, unfortunately. They're starting to see some other parts that they might look at us now as well. But I think Bruce's approach is right. Be friendly, be upfront, try to explain to them just how much carbon is being emitted from this stuff. I think a turning point for this government might be within the next week or 2 weeks, cabinet's considering Site C and what the hell to do with Site C. And I think that's going to be, it's a huge, difficult problem. I don't envy them whatsoever for the situation they're in. And whatever decision they make, it's going to be a negative decision for them. They're going to lose. It's a lose-lose situation, whichever they do. And they're going to need some support around that if they decide to kill it. And they're going to see around the LNG stuff. I mean, again, I don't know how one does it, but I think that we have to start talking about emissions from Canada in relation to Canada federally as well, is what our emissions are worldwide from what we export, as well as what we emit within our country.
Yeah.
So, just as an example, like with LNG, something like 75% of the emissions are overseas.
Yeah.
So we don't
I think one of the other challenges we've got right now is you can't buy A and B with the same pot of money. So every dollar that you put into a hydrogen filling station is a dollar you can't put into an electric charging station.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges that we've got right now, I think that these people have got to be talking to the government about, is somebody earlier was talking about the fact they have solar panels on their roof and that generates electricity and that allows them to run their electric car. And nobody knows how much electricity that electric car uses or how much electricity they generate. And this is energy that can't be taxed. Now, if I'm selling you hydrogen and you have to go someplace to buy your hydrogen, I can then tax the hydrogen at source. And that has got to be what these people are talking about to government, why hydrogen highway is a good idea, because we can tax the hydrogen you use at source. And you can't do that with electrical.
But Bruce,
Well-
the price is so high, they can't have a tax on it.
Well, I agree with you. The price is
The
ridiculous.
price is
Yeah.
equivalent to $2.50 a liter or something like that. And if they put a 20-cent tax on that, it kills it even further. And
But
no one's
everybody focuses on the fact that the only output from the exhaust pipe is clean, drinkable water.
I know.
To go back to the original question that Jim had with regards to VIVA and the stance, you guys have a constitution. Is there some way to introduce a?
We don't have. We're just rewritten our constitution. There was a big battle. I don't know who I'm talking to here, so that's really difficult.
Glenn.
We can't really share the discussions of the board of directors publicly.
Right.
But what I'd like you to do is on the 19th, if you do attend our meeting, you'll notice that the constitution that's been written doesn't really talk about any particular fuel for vehicles at all. It does talk about VIVA promoting electric vehicles. It doesn't talk about battery-powered electric vehicles is what we promote. Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association promotes the adoption of battery-powered electric vehicles.
Yeah, and if you notice our mantra, which is behind me, helping accelerate change to sustainable energy future.
Right.
We use that as to say, well, hydrogen is not sustainable.
Yeah. Well, part of the problem we've got here is we've kept that out of anything we're saying because there are people in our organization or one person in our organization that thinks hydrogen is the future and wants to promote hydrogen.
Yeah. Well, we've invited him.
I'll be with you in a minute.
We've invited him to come here and explain it, and that was 9 months ago.